Hi there, my name is Magdalena Ohrman. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Wales Trinity St David. I have recently received for the two following years a Marie Curie Sklodowska Research Fellowships to be hosted at the University of Copenhagen, the Saxo Institute, and more specifically the Center for Textile Research in Copenhagen. I will be working on a project that's called TexRex, short for Textile Reflections. It concerns multisensory representation of textile work in Latin poetry and prose. It's been developed in collaboration with the Center for Textile Research in Copenhagen, but throughout the development process of this project, and indeed foreseen in its execution, is also an element of collaboration with UWTSD. I will work on a project that deals with textiles and textual description of textiles in the Roman world. I get to look at descriptions of spinning and weaving in texts from the Roman world, from the 4th century BC all the way into late antiquity and the early medieval period. One of the things I like best about this project is that I get to author hop and move through a wide chronological area and follow long-term developments and try to access in the textual descriptions of spinning and weaving how much ancient authors knew and understood of how these crafts worked. Turns out, as I've already started some of the preliminary work on this project, that that's quite a bit more than we might have thought, and quite a bit more of that knowledge can be accessed through the text, a source that's been very underused in textile history thus far. This is a project that pulls together both textual descriptions as well as archaeological sources, archaeological artifacts, finds, and so on, results from excavation, but also experimental archaeology to be able to use reconstructions of ancient craft practices that help us understand far better the distinct elements of how you actually spin, how you actually weave, what sounds, what movements that generates. Because it is those elements that are carried into text far more than, say, a description of what a loom looks like or what a spindle whorl looks like. It is a project that brings together both archaeology, experimental archaeology, developing very strongly at this present point. I work with the Experimental Centre at Lejre in Denmark and the Center for Textile Research in Copenhagen that has a lot of experience in that area, but it hasn't really been used to improve our understanding of textual descriptions up until now, and that's the angle that I'm adding. One very important thing that I hope will come out of it is that it will revitalize the engagement of textile historians with textual sources. We have now come far enough in terms of understanding of textile archaeology, including amazing technological developments like strontium isotope analyses that allows us to trace where the fibers that have been used for textile fragments that survive to us actually came from, allows us to look at trade. Now we can use that as a platform in combination with the literary passages much more in a much more sophisticated way than we could previously. I also hope that by showing that ancient authors were exposed to and could pass on understanding of crafts to us, they must have had a good understanding of it. They must have seen it happening. Yeah, whether they saw that happening in workshops as they pass along the busy city streets, whether that's in Rome, the city, or in the province, or whether they saw it happen within their own homes. Our authors are mainly elite male characters. They must have been, as my project will show, exposed to crafts happening. What environment did that knowledge come from? Yeah? If I can drill down into that, we can also understand more of both the city environment, rural and urban, and of Roman home environments as well. One of the things that I look at is sound mimicking in Roman texts of weaving and of spinning. Particularly in terms of weaving, we need to take into account, when we look at texts talking about this, the sounds that the loom would have made. That's things like the wooden loom frame clanking as the weaver moves it. It's things like the sound of the loom weights, high-fired clay loom weights tinkling against each other, making a wonderful musical sound. Yeah? And those are things that you would experience if you were in the same room, in the same vicinity as a weaver, even if you weren't paying close attention to the weaver, to the weaver's every single step of the work process. Yeah? And those things flow into texts. I've looked at examples both from the Augustan period in Virgil and Tibullus to key Augustan poets. I've looked at texts into late antiquity, and their texts, their passages where they talk about weaving, they mimic those sounds, both in the metrical rhythm and in terms of the sound combinations that they have picked for their text. Where do they pick to put in a lot of consonants, K's and S's? Where do they pick a lot of P's and B's to make plosive noises, mimicking this beating of the weaving sword on the warp that is arising? This has been a great opportunity for me to bring teaching and research together, both because as I was working my way into this, and because I have been primarily focusing on Roman poetry, and particularly Roman poetry of the Augustan period up until now, in order to approach this project, I needed to broaden my experience of working with Roman authors. I needed to read agricultural authors like Columella's Handbook on Agriculture from the 1st century AD. I took the opportunity to do that with my advanced Latin students a year or so ago. And we worked our way into this text talking about sheep rearing, farming, the housewife at the farm and her tasks, which included things like overseeing spinning and weaving and cloth production. Because I learned to spin, because I learned to handle wool by attending experimental workshops in preparation for this project, I was able to bring those items with me into class. I've had a couple of students that have learned to spin with a drop spindle as a result of this. I've used it for open day presentations and just to show people and give students a sense of what type of materials that the ancients would have handled on an everyday basis. What does a fleece feel like when it comes straight off the sheep? How do you pluck it apart? We've done that in class, and it always enhances our understanding of text. It is not until you start handling a spindle that you start slowly pulling out the thread that you can fully understand the metaphor that Ovid uses at the beginning of his epic, The Metamorphoses, of pulling out a song just like you pull out the thread on a spindle. When you build up body memory of these work processes, you gain a better understanding of the way that they are used as poetical metaphors as well. And I've had great fun bringing that into the classroom. And I very recently had one of the students who took Columella with me, learned a lot about sheep rearing and different sheep breeds in 1st century Italy, actually go after metapoetic connotations of weaving in a really excellent essay for a completely different period, completely different author, but just taking that further understanding with them into delving into another text that dealt with similar themes.